Good evening, everybody. I'm Gary Freeze, and this is the Fire and Ice podcast presented by Backyard Sports. With me, I have Andy Flint, our resident NBA expert. How you doing, Andy?
What's going on, man? I got a message for Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, you cannot be taking up an all-star spot on the bench and then not playing because you're tired, man. That is weak.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was kind of curious how you felt about that. We hadn't really talked about that. I know his post-game interview was legendary, but, copping out on the flu and taking up an all-star spot.
Yeah, I love Jimmy, man. Like, Jimmy's one of my favorite players currently in the NBA, but I don't know how you can sleep at night, man. You can't do that.
All right, so let's jump right into it, man. We're going to come out swinging. So Mark Cuban fined $600,000 for voicing his opinion about the best step forward for the Mavs. So I already know how you feel about it. Everybody knows it's done, but kind of leave some secrecy, right? But what's the difference, in your opinion, between what Mark Cuban said and trust the process in Philly?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't necessarily have a problem with tanking, and that's because I don't feel like there's really a legitimate way to stop it as far as the NBA is concerned. There's too many games. When you talk in sport like the NFL, it's a little easier because you're only playing the 16 games. You have the 17-week schedule. And with the NBA, it's just so hard. There's going to be a handful, a dozen, 24 games where some teams play that aren't going to mean much, and it's impossible to stop them from tanking. But when you're Mark Cuban, we know you're outspoken. We know your personality, and that's why we love you, Mark. We love you for those exact things. But you have to keep something in-house. It's like these girls we see walking down the street in the mini skirt, and we say it's nice, we like it, the shape. Am I giving too much for the people at home? But keep something for the imagination. So, Mark, tell your players, tell your coaching staff, tell the execs, but don't tell the world because it's going to catch you a fine. $600,000, though, it's a little excessive.
So what would you do to stop teams from being so explicit about tanking?
I mean, the fine is the way to start if you don't want people talking about it. And I know some people feel like, it's your team, you can do whatever you want, but this is a business. This is the NBA. It's an organization. And as an owner, you're not just representing yourself. As a team owner, you're representing the other 29 teams in the league. So you have to be professional, and there has to be a way to go about it. Trusting the process is one thing because, that was a little bit different. But here for Mark Cuban, Mark Cuban was mad. That's what it is. He's a little pissed off, and he's just basically saying, best option is to tank. You kind of have to swallow the pride a little bit and, let everything go through the motions. I would be a terrible NBA owner because I would be like 100 times worse than Mark Cuban. You can bet on it.
So how much of what he said do you think is him kind of lashing out and trying to make the NBA understand that this lottery system is broken and they need to fix it? Because I think we all can agree to a certain extent the lottery system isn't working as intended because we do have teams that once you're eliminated from he said it last year, once you're eliminated from the playoffs, there's no reason to win any more games. They played all their young players. You're not gonna get guys to go out there and not try, but you're not gonna play your best players. So how much of this do you think it was Cuban kind of saying, hey, Commissioner Silver, the system's broken, we've got to fix it, and he's willing to eat the cash for it?
Oh, I think that was probably 70 to 80% of what he was doing. Cuban has the cash. He doesn't care. Tanking, Shark Tank. Why not combine these things? But no, it is kind of a broken system, and it is flawed. But at the same time, I just don't personally know how you fix it. You ask me a lot of NBA questions. You ask me, how to solve the playoff thing. And I'll tell you a 16 seed playoff system is the best system regardless of conference. There's a lot of things. I could tell you that, consolidating the league a little bit would be better for the league, things of that nature. I have all sorts of ideas, but when it comes to tanking, I just don't know, because if you take away the lottery system, you're just going to encourage tanking more. Obviously, teams that lose out are just going to, get the last pick. So I don't know what to do about it. I'm sure there's some bright individuals out there who follow our page, follow the YouTube page, and they could probably tell us or shed some light, but I just don't have the answer for that.
Yeah, that's, I mean, a big part of it. Just what's the solution? Because the more you take away the randomness or pseudo randomness of the lottery, the more teams are just going to tank right from the get go. And it's going to be a hard fix, but they definitely need to do something to kind of change the culture of the NBA, because one star can change a franchise, and that's why they do it. So it'd be interesting to see how the NBA is going to approach it in the future. But getting back to this weekend's festivities, what did you think of the AllStar Game? The new format seemed to make it more competitive, especially the finish. That was an awesome finish. Little defense down the stretch actually decided the game.
That AllStar Game was awesome. I mean, 148 to 145, the lowest scoring AllStar Game since 2013, and that's not terribly long ago, but it's a few years. And if you take into consideration the fact that the 3-point shot just gets, more and more popular, we're getting up in height here with the way it's used. You're probably, if you rewind to 2013 or 2012, you're probably talking more like a 125 to 122 game, with the way that the three is used now compared to then. 18 fouls by Team LeBron, I believe 17 fouls by Team Steph, or maybe it's vice versa. It was 35 fouls in all, which the funny thing to me were, if you listen to the commentators during the game, is they were really harping on the foul count thing. And I found it to be a little bit misleading. It was almost like a media type hype thing, because if you rewind to last year, there were 30 fouls total, 19 by one team, 11 by the other. So we didn't see, they were acting like there was one point where one of the commentators said something along the line of like, there was 2 fouls by this point. And it's false. The fouling was a little bit different. I felt like, guys were kind of still playing the Ole defense that we've come to know in the NBA All-Star Game, letting guys go by them. And I get it. It's an injury thing. You don't want to hurt anybody. You don't want to hurt yourself. But they were contesting shots. There was a lot of slap-aways, things of that nature. Anthony Davis had 2 fouls, like, right out of the gate. I believe within the first several minutes. He didn't clock another foul the rest of the game, but early on he was in foul trouble. I remember looking at the TV like, you better take that man out of the game. But it was almost like a real game. I really enjoyed it this year. I enjoyed some of the other festivities, but that game came down to it. There was a point where I felt like with about 45 seconds left, Paul George took Joel Embiid, got him squared up out there by the 3-point line, took him off the dribble. Embiid blocked the shot. I thought it was a foul. I don't know how many other people in the world thought it was foul. I thought he bodied him on the ground once, and then I thought he also came across his shoulder and head a little bit, but he did get the ball. Wasn't called. That's fine. There was obviously the replay thing. Gary, I know you want to talk about the replay thing. So the replay, it clearly goes off Embiid, and then I believe it was Paul George, right? It bounced over Paul George's shoe. Whose shoe was that? Durant's shoe. But it bounced over Durant's shoe. And I'll tell you, I'll be the first one to admit that the first 3 replays, it looked like it hit Durant's shoe to me. And even from the one replay, I thought the ball looked like it kind of changed its course a little bit, which is one of those classic NFL things where the ball kind of moved, it changed its direction, so somebody must have tipped it. But when you see that replay from behind Embiid, I mean, it clearly clears 2-3 inches. And I don't know if the referees didn't have that view. They had to have. So I'm just calling this is the drop ball. They screwed it up. I mean, it obviously didn't change anything at the end of the day because Team LeBron still ended up winning. But that's kind of one of those little black eyes there. You're trying to be the NFL a little bit too much, and you screwed it up a little bit.
Yeah, so, I mean, the big thing to look at there is I don't know how they have all this equipment. And they still find a way to mess it up. And they've got millions of dollars worth of video equipment. I can see it from my couch. I know they can see it where they're at. So it's a little confounding when the NFL gets it wrong all so often, and the NBA usually gets it pretty well right. I was surprised to see that they got that one wrong. And maybe they didn't have that one look at that exact moment. I don't know what it was, but it was a little confounding to see they got it so wrong. It didn't end up affecting the outcome of the game. LeBron's team ended up coming back and winning it. So the loss of position will kill him. But I think one word, though, you talked about the fouls and the defense. I think one word for the game that is different than All-Star games in the past is just effort. They played defense in a different way. So that's the big takeaway for me, and that's what made the game much better for me this year as opposed to years past. And to go a little into, you brought up the other festivities of the weekend. I mean, we had Dinwiddie, Booker, and Donovan Mitchell, and I mean, the youngsters stole the show, guys that most casual NBA fans probably don't know much about, if they even know who they are. And then you had the fantastic finish of the All-Star Union. When was the last time we had an All-Star Weekend that really gave us this much entertainment?
Well, you know, and that's a great point. I really try to play devil's advocate on this a little bit, and I try to, you know, you asked me the questions a little bit before the show, and I really wanted to come up with something. 2015 was a pretty great All-Star game, or All-Star Weekend, rather. The West beat the East 163 to 158. I believe Russell Westbrook was the MVP. That was one of his back-to-backs. Zach LaVine won his first dunk contest title against Victor Oladipo. That was a pretty good final battle. I think a lot of people tend to forget because Zach LaVine was so overwhelming for actually 2 years, 2015 and 16, that he actually faced really stiff competition. Oladipo did what was dubbed as the 540 dunk. It was actually a 360. I don't know how we got into this 540 thing. What he did was he dunked the basketball on the opposite side of the rim, the reverse dunk. So they called it a 540. I was really always confused about that, but it was a great dunk. It looked awesome. Great battle down to the end. And Steph Curry won his first title that year. He beat out Clay and Kyrie. They didn't put up much of a fight, but he still won. And then 2016, I had to look it up, was actually pretty good too. That was the Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine dunk contest, which was like epic, hands down, probably the best final round that I've ever actually witnessed on television myself personally. Maybe the best final round ever. I know a lot of you old heads are going to be out there like, no way, Jordan, Dominique, these guys. I mean, but Zach LaVine, Aaron Gordon, go back and watch it. I mean, Aaron Gordon beats almost every dunk contest champion. And I'm just saying that because I'm a Magic fan, but like his dunks were crazy. I still feel like he almost got robbed by LaVine, but LaVine is so smooth, it's just ridiculous. And then Klay Thompson actually edges out Steph Curry, who won the year before, and then Devin Booker, who won this year against Klay Thompson in the final round. So that was kind of a cool three-point competition. The All-Star game wasn't anywhere near as good, but I think overall I probably have to give the edge to the 2018. You know, call me a prisoner of the moment or whatever you want to, but I think 15 and 16 were both pretty good. Last year was kind of trash. But yeah, this year was great. I mean, Donovan Mitchell bringing it back to Utah. He's the late subbing for Aaron Gordon. Booker bringing that three-point contest to Phoenix. And then you got Spencer Dinwiddie bringing it back to Brooklyn. A couple of franchises in Phoenix and Brooklyn who don't have a lot to cheer for beyond those things. But yeah, it was fun, man. I had a really good time watching this All-Star game. You know, even the celebrity game, watching Quavo block girls and stuff like that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. It was a very entertaining weekend. You know, you talk about the dunk contest too. With a lot of the throwback dunks, they were really cool. I thought the Nance dunk was really awesome. People are critiquing kind of foot placement and whatnot, but it was super cool with the throwback jersey, and Mitchell with the VC throwback jersey was really cool. So people are nitpicking those dunks, but I think they were really awesome. And Dennis Smith Jr. didn't win, but he probably had the best dunk of the night.
He did have the best dunk of the night.
Dunk. So, you know, it was a great weekend, but now we get to the second half. Well, the de facto second half of the season. You know, every team's played more than half their game. But post All-Star break, if you will, Vegas has drastically changed the odds in the East. You got the Cavs as the favorite now, and they're a pretty heavy favorite from the looks of their initial lines. Here at Backyard Sports, we hassled them a lot during their nosedive, a couple videos, a couple posts. The moves they made and the fact that they have LeBron James convince you they should be the favorite in the East now?
Yeah, I mean, listen, they have to be. And, you know, the people who run the Vegas odds were just waiting for something to happen. you have LeBron James. It's almost like when you live by this river that has really poor, like there's a terrible little ravine, and at any second this thing can flood. So you're always prepared. You live on this little farm or whatever. And I can say that because we live in the country out here. But you're always preparing. So I feel like Vegas is always preparing for LeBron James to do something, even when times got tough, like they did this year. And we talked a little bit around the trade deadline, and the Cavs made some great moves. I know when you look back on things as a package, so you look back on the fact that the Cavs traded Kyrie Irving, okay? Probably the fourth or fifth best point guard in the NBA, depending on where your rankings stand. We won't get into that tonight. You trade him, and you get back Isaiah Thomas, and you get back Jay Crowder, and you get that, Brooklyn pick, and you say, everything's going to be all right. And I'm even one of those people who was like, oh, man, you're getting Isaiah Thomas, who's essentially a pointer man's Kyrie. You're getting Jay Crowder, who can guard a guy like Durant down the stretch, because that's what that was. Plus, you're getting that Brooklyn pick. And it's great. It's almost like the Cavs kind of pulled one over on the Celtics, but it doesn't work out. What the Cavs did was super smart and something a lot of teams, not just in basketball, but in sports can't do, and that's admit they were wrong. And they deal Isaiah Thomas to the Lakers because who saw Isaiah Thomas's, stock being Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance Jr.? I mean, if you would have told me that at the end of last year, I would have slapped you in the face and told you were nuts. Nothing against Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance Jr. because I think they're two great pieces. And I think they're, especially two great pieces beside LeBron James. But the Cavs go out there and they trade these guys who just aren't working for them. They get younger. They get more athletic. They get better defensively. The George Hill thing is great. George Hill is a very serviceable point guard. He knows the game. He's a good defender. He's strong. He can shoot the ball. You get Clarkson, who's athletic. He's young. He's a good defender, an underrated defender. You get Larry Nance, and you get Rodney Hood, who's a shooter. And Rodney Hood playing beside a player like LeBron James is phenomenal. I mean, Rodney Hood's probably never going to have it better in his career than playing besides LeBron James. The big question mark with him is his health. So, this team does that. They have a lot of turnover, but they manage to keep some good pieces. They keep the Tristan Thompson. They keep J.R. Smith. Iman Shumpert's out. He wasn't really doing anything there. And then, you have Kevin Love coming back. So I think easily the Cavs should be the favorite. They're a few games back right now. Toronto's in the lead, but I know that everybody kind of has a little problem with Toronto. Toronto has never really fared well in the playoffs with Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. We'll see. I mean, every year's new. Boston's still working it out. They're on kind of a slide. They haven't really been doing well lately. So I don't necessarily expect Cleveland to take the 1 seed. They might even just stay at 3. I don't expect them to slide because they have teams like Washington, who doesn't have John Wall, and Indiana behind them. So I think 3, maybe the 2 seed, but even if they stay at 3, they're fine. And I'm telling you right now that nobody wants to play them in the second round. If you're Boston or Toronto, I mean, you're not liking that matchup at all. I completely expect them to represent the East in the finals.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. It's just, we were just waiting for the hat to drop. Everybody was talking about waiting for Isaiah to kind of come around and be Isaiah, and that was going to be the thing that made the difference. But it wasn't working. He got a little vocal, and, whether it was LeBron going to the GM or the GM going to LeBron, as has been reported, somebody made a decision there in Cleveland and said, we've got to make some changes here. And they got younger, they got more athletic, and maybe they can entice LeBron to stick around after this year, beyond just this year's Eastern Conference Finals. But, you talk about Toronto, it's your boy Jimmy Buckets that doesn't like Toronto. So
they're doo-doo.
But anyway, moving on. So during the All-Star game, and this is going to get into the playoffs here, C. Webb decided to voice his opinion that any team in the NBA could beat the Golden State Warriors in a 7-game series. And he tried to defend it for a couple minutes. Well, any team could. I'm not saying they're going to, and blah, blah, blah. And that old tired kind of propaganda, he walked it back. So, we know he's foolish and whatnot. But about 2 minutes later, they got into the conversation, and Reggie Miller kind of set him straight. So good on Reggie there. But Are you still convinced that the Rockets are the biggest threat to the Dubs, or is it now the Cavs?
No, I still think it's the Rockets. And that's not to say anything against the Cavs. I think the Cavs are phenomenal. I still put the Rockets. I think the Rockets are the second best team in the league. I do think Golden State is the best team in the NBA. I think the Rockets are the second best team in the NBA. I'm a little fuzzy. I kind of lean towards the Cavs as the third best team in the NBA at this point. We do need to see a little bit from them. I was kind of riding the Boston bus for a little bit there, but they're kind of showing me something. I think Tatum's kind of hit that rookie wall a little bit. Jaylen Brown's realizing he's having to do a little too much. Kyrie, for the first time, and nothing against Kyrie, I think he's played phenomenal, but for the first time, he's coming to the realization that he's managing a championship caliber team by himself. And, that can be one of those things. Al Horford, I think, is probably the most solid guy they have because he's just the pro's pro. He's been there for so long. Atlanta made a lot of playoffs with him. But I think it's Houston, man. And defend C-Web a little bit. I love C-Web. C-Web might be like my favorite commentator in the NBA at this point. I just love him because he's something different. He gives it to – he feels like I'm talking to one of my friends, and I love him for that. Not to mention phenomenal player in his day. But, yeah, I when he said that, I cringed a little bit, and I was like, come on, C-Web. This isn't the NFL. This isn't one game. I agree that in one game, anybody's game, even though with Golden State, that's a little bit of a stretch because they're one of the most dominant teams I've seen in sports. But, no, it's Houston, man. Houston has that formula because they can shoot the ball. They have some guys on the wing to throw at guys defensively. And, you're talking Chris Paul, cerebral, James Harden, cerebral. Like, you just have these guys, and James Harden is big time. Stephen A. Smith, big time. I mean, he's just one of those gamers. I mean, if you have a guy to counter a Steph Curry or a LeBron James, you want a James Harden. I mean, and it's point blank. And Chris Paul has long been, Chris Paul before Steph Curry and like Russell Westbrook came and took the mantle, Chris Paul was referred to as the best point guard in the NBA, probably the third best player in the NBA for the longest time. So I just think Houston's got the formula. And Mike D'Antoni, we've laughed at him in the past. And now, like, he was built for this era. So it's Houston.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I'm still, personally, I'm going to leave the jury out a little bit on the Cavs. I think, and feel free to respond with, your thoughts on it. But I think we're a little bit of victims of the moment with the Cavaliers right now because the first game that they had with their new look, they blew the Celtics out. And I think you're spot on with your assessment of the Celtics that right now they're kind of hitting that spot in the season where they might be in their lull and they may come out of it and they may be the best team in the East when all is said and done because Tatum's kind of hitting the rookie wall. Jaylen Brown's still kind of trying to find his way to manage the role that he's got with that team because it is a very elevated role for a guy who really entered the season without a lot of expectation until the moves that were made and it elevated him to that starting position, in the starting lineup. He wasn't expected to be that guy, and they're asking a lot of him. With the injury to Gordon Hayward, that changed his role a lot. So they may figure it out by the playoffs. I think Brad Stevens is on his way to becoming the best coach in the NBA, if not the best coach right now. I think he's the best strategist in the NBA. What do you think in terms of is it an overreaction right now with the Cavs, or do you think that this is something that's going to be sustainable? I know you said that you think they're the favorite, but is this really what we should expect from them the rest of the way?
I mean, yeah, I do think they're the favorite, but I do also believe it's an overreaction. I mean, if you can put those two things together, everybody's a prisoner of the moment. It's, a lot of what have you done for me lately type of stuff. But, we're seeing new things, and obviously that blowout of Boston in Boston, it's one of those things that's going to make people overreact. But, I do think that what LeBron James needs in the NBA is the right pieces. And once he gets the right pieces, he's tough to beat. I have no doubt in my mind. I'm going to tell you right now that I think Boston is going to finish number 1 in the East. They're only 2 games behind Toronto, and I can't trust Toronto. Like, I love DeMar DeRozan. I love where his game's gone because DeMar DeRozan, I mean, let's put it out there. He's become a much better three-point shooter. He's become a much better passer. His assists are up this year. His three-point shooting percentage is up this year. And I'm thankful I have him in fantasy basketball. I couldn't be happier. But I've never trusted Toronto. Like we saw Toronto lose to the Wizards a few years ago when they were, the better seed. We've seen Kyle Lowry completely collapse in the playoffs. We've seen DeMar DeRozan kind of follow suit and not do so well. So I really kind of expect Boston, especially with the Al Horford concept and the Kyrie Irving thing, because Kyrie Irving's been here before. Al Horford's the vet. I expect them to make up that 2 games, and I think they're going to win the East as far as best record at the end of the season. I feel like when the playoffs come around, I think it's going to be the LeBron James show, and I do expect the Cavs to win. That's me. As far as Jason Tatum, he's played a great season. His rookie season has been phenomenal. The problem with him right now is the games, the amount of games. I mean, you just can't go from playing the college level games to playing an 82-game season. It kills these players. And it's nothing against him. I think he's going to have a great career. And, Jaylen Brown's been phenomenal too. Another guy whose role probably wasn't expected to be so big this year. He stepped up and met the challenges. Defense is as good as his offense. And I think Boston will be okay. I mean, I think they're going to give somebody a fight, the Cavs, the Raptors, whoever it may be. But I got to give the edge to Cleveland. I've just seen this book. I've read this book before with LeBron James. I mean, how many in a row? We going for 48?
It's getting close. It's getting close to that number. So, and here's a quick fun fact. You bring up Al Horford as being probably the most solid guy on that team. He's the most consistent guy on that team for sure. Do you know that he has as many All-Star Game appearances as Reggie Miller?
I did not.
Yeah, they both have 5.
He's a quiet star.
Yeah,
he's a quiet star. He's played out of position his whole career. Like, that guy was a power forward.
Yeah,
I kept saying I'm waiting for him to play power forward. I'm waiting for him to play power forward. And it never happened. He just stayed center, and now it's perfect for him for the way he plays the center position.
Yeah, especially in that lineup with what he brings to the table and what they ask of him, it's kind of the perfect marriage of player and team and coaching philosophy for sure. But so that's all we have for today. Thank you for joining us. Andy, do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I just want to say for all you out there, don't be so hard on Fergie, because she did massacre the anthem. But for her age, she's still real hot. That's it.
That's a good-looking woman. All right. Thank you for joining us on the Fire and Ice podcast presented by Backyard Sports. Over and out.